Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Captive Audience. It's Wonderful Wednesday, and it's Don Anderson, along with Sunny Danforth, known as Steel Winning. She never gets tired of winning.
No, I will not get tired of winning, and I feel like we're winning with the nominees that President-elect Trump is putting forth.
Oh my goodness. It's just every time he puts one forward, people lose their minds. And I don't some of them I don't know much about, but I know they're great because left-wing media loses its mind. So I know right then they must be great. What's that
Well,
old military adage? When you start catching flack, you're over the target, as they say in the Air Force, right?
that's exactly right. And that's like you. There's many that I don't know, so I looked them up. And I guess he made a many today, so I'm not real familiar with some that he's done today.
Mhm.
And but I'll say I just trust what he's doing. I trust what he's doing, and um, there's we're going to see how it all shakes out.
Oh, it's yeah. I'm excited. The more angry they get, the better. But before jumping, because we're going to get into all of that, but I just want to give you all. I'll call it my opening rant because I came across this article about 4 or 5 days ago, and I scribbled it down. And I thought immediately, okay, I got to talk about this on Wednesday, right? So here goes. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the. I can't remember her name. It's a congresswoman from New York State, and she's basically got on all the news channels and started talking about she wanted New York to secede from the union, to basically join Canada and leave the United States. And all I could think to myself as I laughed out loud, my wife started looking at this is like, that now that is truly rich. And they say that Trump is anti-democracy. So here's the situation where they lost an election. And rather than just dealing with the results of election, looking in the mirror, seeing what they did wrong, they want to leave the country. And the great thing about the Democratic Party is they're entirely predictable because they've done this before. So time for a little walk through history. You all know how much I love history, right? The last time the Democrats wanted to secede from the Union, they didn't like the result of a vote. What they left the Union for was to keep slavery. Never forget that. They wanted slavery, they left the Union. So this is the party that seceded from the Union in order to keep 600 in order to keep blacks enslaved. And the result of their policy was 600,000 people getting killed in the Civil War. Never forget, that's the party that did that. This is the party that had a governor who stood on the schoolhouse steps in order to keep black kids from going to school. That's the Democrat Party. This is the party that invented the KKK to keep black people from voting. That's the Democrat Party. It's the Democrat Party that put Japanese citizens in concentration camps during World War II. Not the Republican Party. The Democrat Party did that. The Democrat Party was the party that dropped atomic bomb on Japanese people. The Democrat Party did that. They put abortion clinics in black and brown neighborhoods so they could reduce the surplus population. That's the Democrat Party that did that. It's the Democrat Party that reduced police officers in black and brown neighborhoods in order to increase the chaos and cause more crime. The Democrat Party did that. It's the Democrat Party that's been paying illegals to live in the neighborhoods of black and brown citizens at the expense of everybody else. That's the Democrat Party that did that. So that's the party that wants to secede from the Union. Now, I don't want New York State to secede from the Union, but I'd love that the Democrats would secede from the Union and just go across the border. We'd be all better off if they would do that. So I'll stop there. That's my opening rant. Sonny, your comments, I'll take a breath.
Well, I'll tell you that many of the Democrats are ceding. They're coming over to our side. You know?
Great point. That is true.
They're coming over to our side because more and more people are waking up. But yeah, there's a lot of rhetoric out there, and to realize, I think there's so many people that don't realize all of the things that you just said that are from the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party of yesteryear no longer exists. It's been plain to see. And to see what they're doing now, in my viewpoint, they're the party of destruction of the United States. They want to see. That's what's exhibited. If you're willing to look, that's what's exhibited by the electeds in the United States that are wanting to just tear our country down. That's why we have wide open borders. That's why, like today or yesterday, I don't know if it was yesterday or today, I just saw a bleed that Biden says, I want to give $1 billion to Africa. And yet we have North Carolina, we have all of the problems in the United States. And he says, and let them to help them rebuild after natural disasters, but they're not taking care of Americans.
Oh, it's
And
crazy.
it's,
Yeah,
yeah,
and what it is the progressive wing of the Democrat Party took over the Democrat Party. The extreme far left took over the leadership of the Democrat Party. So those JFK, RFK Democrats are like, I don't want to say they're dead, but they're they're on life support, and you can hardly think of one. Maybe you can think of maybe Manchin is the only prominent one left. But the rest of them, if you run through the list of Democrats, you can hardly think of any of them that are what you might call traditional liberals. They're progressives, and we really ought to make that distinction. The old
yeah,
traditional liberals, at least they were trying to do things in their minds. They were trying to help the country. You think about the Mondales, the Jimmy Carters, even the Bill Clintons. They weren't about destroying the country. Yeah, we disagreed with what their thoughts were around how to make it better, and in some cases they were drastically wrong. But I would argue they weren't actively trying to destroy the country. This new crop from Obama on are here to actively destroy the country. And the fastest way you can destroy a constitutional republic is you can destroy the family. And you look at the attack on the family. You look on the attack on parenthood. It's been crazy. We can't even define what a woman is. They hate men. Um, they're chopping the children up.
yeah.
It's absolutely insane because if you want to destroy people's capacity to reason, you destroy the vehicle that teaches people how to not be savages, and that vehicle is parents. And then the vehicle that helps them to do that is the church, and they've equally attacked that as well. And it's been crazy. And I don't think in history of the United States we've ever seen anything like this.
I don't th- I agree with that, but I'm going to go step back and push back just a little on that because Bill Clinton, when he signed the North America Free Trade Agreement, we didn't see anything radical that I can
Hmm.
recall off the top of my head,
Hmm.
except when he signed the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement,
Hmm.
because even back then I knew that was a job killer for America, and I realized that
Hmm.
it was easier to tear America down than to raise up other nations. And it was a way of raising up other nations. And
Hmm.
so it was another tear at the fabric of our country. And yet the unions all went along with it, and the jobs are leaving America.
Hmm.
And it was not until
Hmm.
Trump
Hmm.
redid the NAFTA into I don't remember the acronym,
Hmm.
but it was Mexico and Canada and us. And so I don't recall anything radical. I mean, because this
Hmm.
is the pedal to the metal on the Cultural Revolution is what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
with everything that's going on. But thankfully, we've got a lot of pushback on that.
Right. Yeah. And that's the greatest thing about and maybe the blessing in disguise. See, back then in the days of Clinton, it was much more hidden. They
Yes.
weren't just blatantly trying to destroy the country in your face and telling you they were going to do it, like they're doing now. And I think maybe that's the difference. They just gotten very comfortable, where they weren't comfortable with this stuff, back then.
Yeah.
One other example, I just had to bring this up as well, is Biden's intending to spend another, I can't remember how many hundreds of millions. So we're spending billions to Ukraine. So another like several $100 million package, the last burst. When another administration is coming into office, you're continuing to try and do a war. I mean, it's unheard of. You're a lame duck president. I mean, that's the best thing you can say about him. And you're sending money to keep a war going. Now,
Yes.
one thing I think people aren't aware of is how many lives have been lost there. We don't think of it in those terms because the media doesn't really cover it, and we're not showing reporters in the trenches over there, that sort of thing, like we did in Vietnam, for example. But here's just a couple of numbers. I just saw this. So there's about a million people died in Battle of Stalingrad in World War II, one of the worst slaughters in history, right? And looking at this, and this is from the Wall Street Journal, then they're looking at there's been about a million Ukrainians and Russians that have been killed or wounded since this war began. So we're looking at a slaughter on the scale of the Battle of Stalingrad. Another way to look at this, according to government figures in the first half of 2024, three times as many people have died in the Ukraine as were born last year. I mean, you get your arms around it. Can you imagine a disaster of
Yeah.
that magnitude here? That's what's happening there, and we're funding the destruction of Ukrainians and Russian soldiers, from our pockets for a war that doesn't benefit Ukrainians. It doesn't benefit us. The only people it benefits are defense contractors and the senators whose pockets they're lining. It's This needs to stop.
Well, absolutely, it needs to stop. And so, I mean, we've got to.
I love that, Lori. Wall Street Urinal. That's
Yes. Oh, yes.
everybody's got to go to the bathroom, so I had to read it. I admit.
That's good. That's good. And hi, everybody. Glad you're able to join us here. So, it is, and yet right now it is so dang frustrating seeing Biden, him saying, we're going to spend everything we can. And then I don't know if I saw a undercover video from Veritas, and it was some guy who works at the EPA, if I'm not mistaken. I only saw the video once yesterday, briefly. And this person was saying, "Oh yeah, we've got $5 billion we've got to just spend, and we're giving it away." And the person who's got the camera recording says,
Mhm.
"Well, who are you giving it to?" "Oh, well, we're giving it away to those NGOs that are going to, help the Green New Deal type of thing, And it's like, oh my gosh, Biden's just trying to. This is part of the destruction. They're trying to burn through the whole frickin' budget, you know.
And see, here's
But I will
it,
say I was happy to see that the speaker today says no, and I hope he holds it. That
mhm.
no, when Biden asked for, I think it was like $25 billion. Don't quote me on the figure. That and then they says Johnson said no, we are not going to do that. We'll just let the incoming president handle any future of those expenditures. And I'm like, oh, please, Republicans, hold the line there.
You
Criminy.
know, Listening to this reminds me of a story that I think that your audience would enjoy hearing about the beginnings of my becoming conservative from a political perspective. So I was like, what was I, like 19 or 20? I was in college and I was working in a program. It was called the Upward Bound program. Some of you may have heard of that. It's not the same as Outward Bound. Outward Bound was more in the outdoors. Upward Bound was more in the city. And the objective was to get kids from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds, bring them into a college environment, get their grades. These kids weren't performing academically, get their grades up to the point where they could pursue college. And then when they graduated from high school, they had academic qualifications to go to college. So that was the objective. And so in that program, the person who was running, it's a federal government program. I remember this is the first time I ever heard of a government fiscal year, which I think ends October 31st. And so the end of the year, and this is like, I'm talking $1980. There was like, I don't know, I guess it was around 100 grand, right? And the director was like, we got 100 grand in the budget. We didn't like spend this money. So we hopped in like a couple of cars and trucks, drove down to the local buy mart and just spend it. Just spend the money. Got to spend all the money, because if you don't spend the money, the next year you'll get less money. Now, my little like 19-year-old mind was like, this is, I don't know. I was just beginning. That was my great awakening to like, and then it began to occur to me, this is chump change. They're doing this. Now scale that up across how many millions of programs. Now think about that same philosophy with like defense dollars, right? Or housing and urban development dollars, or you name the government program. And that was the beginning of my understanding around why conservatives think government should stay small. Because the kinds of people who gravitate towards government are the kinds of people who love spending other people's money. They just don't care. And that's under the best of circumstances. I mean, this program wasn't blowing up Ukrainians, for crying out loud, right? They're just like
Right.
wasting your money. And that's what they do. That's what they do.
It definitely is what they do. And then they go, oh gosh, we've got to raise your taxes. We just don't have enough money. because
Yeah.
we're blowing it on the underwater basket weaving study that we had to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and the rest of us, when we have a budget problem, well, we drive a used car, or we drive the car a little longer, or we don't go to the 3-star restaurant, we go to the 1-star restaurant, or we cook at home, or we scale back. But what does the government do? They come and hit you up for more. I mean, I look around our neighborhood here, like this is, and they did this in Portland and they did it in Vancouver as well. They did this huge upscaling of all of the high schools. So if you drive around Portland, the old high schools are like beautiful. Nothing's happening inside them, mind you, but the physical plant is all brand new. Now they're doing this in the middle of the whole COVID scam, and the
Mhm.
economy's bombing, and people are losing their jobs, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars making these old raggedy public schools beautiful. On top of that, at a time when, since they don't believe in anybody having kids, the school age population is decreasing anyway. So, and school buses are driving around empty all day long. Now, if any of you live in the city, you've noticed they just drive around a 50, 60 seat bus just driving through the neighborhood, 4 blocks from school that they could walk to. I'm just like all I see is myself standing at the urinal, urinating money to use at the Wall Street urinal, urinating money. That's what government does. It's just like if I had any hair, I would pull it out. Okay. That's what they do. That's what they're doing to us. This Department of Government Efficiency is like brilliant. If Milton Friedman was alive, he'd get up out of the grave and come clap, right? This is exactly, it needs to be shrunk. Regulations need to go away. Programs need to go away. I mean, just what's the guy's name down? Is it Argentina? The guy who has the axe. The guy
Malay. Yes.
Malay. That guy needs to come visit DC. Wouldn't that be a great photo op if those two guys, if he comes up to visit Trump? Oh, I hope that happens.
Well, he was recently here.
Oh,
He was
was
at
it? Okay.
Mar-a-Lago recently here, and I was thinking, "Oh yeah, there he's gonna because he has turned their economy around.
Oh,
It's painful, but he has turned it around."
yeah.
And I read an article a couple of weeks ago about some of what he's been doing in Argentina, and I'll tell
Mhm.
you, that's the type of thing. In fact, I want to say it was shortly after their visit, if I'm not mistaken, that Trump had said, we've got to put a cap on the credit card
Mhm.
interest rate that credit cards can be charging. It shouldn't be 35% for
No.
crying out loud, and something reasonable. And I, and just a temporary thing, just let's,
Mhm.
get it back under control. Well, I'll tell you, in some countries, and credit card interest rate could even be as high as 50%. It's outrageous where people in America don't necessarily, you think everywhere, maybe some people in the United States think that everywhere else is like here.
Mhm.
Well, here in the United States, this is a very small example.
Mhm.
We have a cell phone, right? We are actually, when you used to have to pay for service, you didn't have unlimited everything.
Mhm.
You got charged for your incoming call and your outgoing call.
Right.
In many other countries, you only get charged for your outgoing calls. You do not get charged for your incoming calls. And so it's not all equal, and it doesn't
Mhm.
need to be all equal. Don't
Mhm.
misunderstand me in that
Yeah.
by any means, because
Mhm.
that's what they try to get us into communism. Everybody's got to be equal. No, no, no. But so what he's doing there anyway, Malay over in Argentina and capping. So my point on that was because of the capping of interest rates. And I remember seeing some really high interest rates when I had looked at stuff when I was in Central America.
Mhm.
So it isn't the same, and that's not a bad thing to help the
Mhm.
citizens get out from under their credit card debt.
Well, a couple of things ought to be discussed for sure. I'm not saying this is definitively the answer because I honestly have not thought a lot about it. But to charge people greater than 21% interest rates, for example, that's just usury. I mean, just bring Guido over, just crack knees instead, right? We got people in credit card debt that they will never get out of. Now, yeah, you could say that's their fault. I mean, I get that. But at the same time, it ought not be that easy for you to get something. that would put you in that kind of debt. I mean, it seems to me that there should be some kind of a limit or some, and I'm sure there's mechanisms for doing that. If you don't have the assets to back beyond a certain amount, it's just like if you go to buy a house, if you don't have enough assets to back up the loan you're getting, they're not going to, or show the potential to earn a certain amount. They're going to cap the amount of loan you can get. You know those things can be put into place, and I'm sure this is no accident that these companies have lobbied to put themselves in the position where they could jack people around with in excess of 20% interest rates,
Yeah.
just like the federal loan scam on these schools, which is another one that's got to come to a stop. So you mean to tell me an 18-year-old can put themselves in debt for 100 grand that they can never get out of? The only debt that you can't get out of? You tell me that that's not some kind of like lobbying scam that the universities have put into place. There's no way you'd be putting kids into a loan if they had to pay back the school directly, and there was nobody backing it. You could bet your bottom dollar they wouldn't let kids get 100 grand in debt, and the prices of those schools would come down. And you'd have to actually prove that the kid's going to be able to get a payback on the dollar invested to go to college. I mean, you realize something like 40% of kids never graduate at all, and then like another 40% never get a job in their field, or
Right.
they don't get a job that didn't even require a college degree. So if let's say 10 kids go to college, 40% don't finish. That leaves six. 40% of that six don't get a gig that would require the degree. So that's two. So 2 out of 10.
Yeah.
That by itself, that tells you all you need to know about the stupidity of college.
Yes. Well, I think I 100% agree with you. So going back to this economy or the budgets and the lack thereof of just spending like crazy, uh, Oregon Governor Kotek has she's got like a budget blowout. Sneak in taxes, a hiring boom,
Mhm.
grow the Oregon uh, government 100%. And she's proposing more to spend more money than what they are bringing in. And she's anticipating federal dollars, a big bunch of federal dollars. Well, she must have gotten some nudge out of Biden,
Mhm.
and the blue states, the blue managed states, which Oregon is sadly
Mhm.
by just sadly, we've anyway. That's what they're doing. California is no different. Governor Newsom's no doing the very same type of thing.
Mhm.
And yet, in this article that I've got here from Oregon Watchdog or Taxpayer Association of Oregon, says that this budget has tricks, traps, and falsehoods. And it's proposing has proposed a $37 billion budget, which amounts to a 13 to 17% budget increase.
Oh,
There's a hidden gas tax. And you know what? Why should the budget increase 13 to 17%? Why?
yeah.
And yet we've got people leaving Oregon, we've got businesses shutting down, you've got vacant buildings,
Mhm.
and you are going to increase this. It's looking like the governor is banking on a 35% gas tax in her budget.
So they're
But
going
they're,
to increase gas taxes on the citizens at
yeah,
a time when they've been hit with inflation of what, around 30% this year? Again, over the last 4 years. Again, it's insane. When you should be doing the exact opposite. When you should be reducing the gas tax, and reducing taxes wherever you can to make life easier for your citizens who are suffering. Instead, these people increase the taxes, which runs the productive citizens out of the state, which then increases the cycle. So you have fewer and fewer productive citizens paying more and more for people that can't produce. Um, it's nuts. And then one last thing I'd add: if more people thought about it this way, so why should and I'll just use a conservative and a liberal state as an example. So why should the citizens of, let's say, Kansas pay more in taxes and have their dollars sent to support California? Because that's exactly what this federal taxation stuff is. Is the citizens of one state mugging the citizens of another state. How about, Oregon, rely on your own stuff? And the Fed shouldn't be in it at all. And I think that's the direction we're headed with this new administration. I really do. And these states who want to spin themselves into the hole, let them drown in their own stuff, like California.
Well, I'll tell you, that's exactly what I think. And you better learn to live within your means. And if the Department of Education all gets shut down and that goes to the states,
Hmm. That's
you
a
know,
prime
it's,
example of what I'm talking about.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What else you got?
Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to just touch on with the border stuff, you can't get enough talking about the border. I mean, I watch these Democrats and trying to analyze why they lost, and it just blows my mind. How can you not understand why you lost? I mean, there's a zillion things you can go into. The high level and the easy ones are inflation. I don't think there's ever been an administration that's won when they've had high inflation. Right? That's just if you because you cannot lie about it. People go to the store and they see it. So you can lie on what I know there's been inflation. The border, you cannot lie about it. I see him walking down the street. I see the tents. In some places, I'm a victim of the crime. You cannot lie about it. And last, maybe to a lesser extent, but war. You're funding wars. I mean, those other things, and obviously there's the other things too. But those things, no. But back to the border, and these are all positive things. I love what Trump is doing with regard to this. Here's a man who's not even the president, and he's had huge impact already. So many of you are, if you're not aware, we'll make you aware. He told Trudeau in Canada, I can't remember the Mexican president's her name, but he told them 25% tariff, fix it or else in terms of this immigration. And there was a sighting of a plane leaving Toronto headed down to Mar-a-Lago. And sure enough, he's down there kissing the ring of Trump already. He's not even in an office. And that's the power that Trump has. And there are people who argue. I've seen some of these liberal talking heads saying things like, we can't impose these tariffs because it's going to hurt, the American citizens even more. That sort of thing. First of all, it's a negotiating ploy. Anybody who has an ounce of common sense knows it's a negotiating ploy. But the second thing is, those countries need us more than we will ever need them. This is still, and by a long shot, the largest market in the world. If you want to sell in the largest market, then we get to dictate the rules. And we've had people in power who've not been dictating the rules. We need to dictate the rules so that it's in favor of our citizens. We're not looking at being unfavorable to other countries, but we're not going to get walked on anymore. And that's one of the things I love about Trump. So you're not going to let our border be an open, porous thing so you can offload your criminals into our country. That's going to stop or else. And it's just awesome to see how quickly these people respond. Remember, never forget, immoral people don't respond to morality play. What they respond to is two things, either economic pain or military pain. And we prefer to give them economic pain first. And that's precisely what is done. And the flow from that caravan from Central America up through Mexico, she stopped it already. He hasn't served one day in office. Isn't that awesome? That's like great news.
I'll tell you, it is great news. And Tom Homan is going to do phenomenal things. He knows what needs to be done. He's worked with the border, and he knows how to get it done. He's also he tells you what he's going to do. He's not out there BSing, and he is firm. And it is interesting to hear, what is it, Kathy Hochul of New York, saying, well, we're not going to, allow them to come in here and take these illegals. Well, then she walks it back, and God, well, you're going to, Tom Homan cites the federal law that allows them to do it, going, if you want to go to jail, that could happen, harboring fugitives or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I like his peace through strength that he's applying, that educating those elected city or county or state officials, saying, no, we have the right to do this, and we'll do it.
And the thing is that drives you nuts, that the ability to do that's always been there. It's not that it wasn't there because he showed up. It's always been there. is that the current administration doesn't want to enforce the law. They want the open border. They want to destroy the United States.
Yeah.
It was great to have somebody who's come into place who's actually going to enforce the law. That's why they call them laws. They need to be enforced. And I love the fact that he's standing up to them. The Denver mayor did the same thing. I'm going to have the citizens come out and do this and that. That's fine. I'll just send them to jail. And I think what the Americans love is they love that. What we love to hear is straight talk. Just
Yes.
tell us what you're going to do. Answer the question. We don't want to hear about your middle class background and upbringing. We just want
Right.
to hear you answer
Right.
the question. And we have people that Trump is selecting for the cabinet who are answering the questions. Just give us straight talk. That's
Yeah.
what we want to hear. That's why they were elected. And I'm so fired up. The other one, even the Democrats who run in these cities who know that they're not going to stay in office if they keep this up, they're changing their behavior too. So ultra leftist sanctuary city loving mayor of New York, what's his name, Mayor Adams.
Yeah.
He's been in a dogfight with the leftists in his city because he's going to start. He's going to cooperate with Homan, and they're already giving him flack. And he's saying, and this is the mayor saying, "Will you go ahead and cancel me?" And understand once again, this is not because he suddenly became ethical overnight. He became ethical because Trump got elected and Homan started talking. So these guys will do what's required to keep their job. And it's unfortunate. I still think that we have to do everything we can to get him out of office. But as long as he's in office, let's make them behave. And if the only way they behave is with an electoral gun to their head, then we need to put that electoral gun to their head. And it's just awesome to have an administration that's finally willing to do that. Not the typical McCain, Romney, Bush get along, go along Rhino variety either, but a principled Republican. I gotta stop saying Republican. No, because there's other kinds of Republicans. We know that.
Yes.
Principled Republicans. How about that for a term?
Repeat that.
Principled Republicans.
I like that. I like that. And this is the thing. Let's enforce the laws on the books. Something that has always infuriated me is when somebody gets elected and goes, "Well, we're not going to enforce this and we're not going to enforce that." Wait a minute. Who gave you that judicial power? Because you must enforce the laws on the books. And if you don't like the laws, you change the law. But that's what you do. And the federal government, it is their number one thing is are taking care of our sovereign borders. Every nation has sovereign borders, has the ability to have them, or porous, however they would like to have them. But there needs to be, I'm ecstatic with Tom Homan, and I look forward to him getting approved into his not approved, that's not the word, confirmed. Thank you very much. Right. Yes, getting confirmed into this position, because we have to get back to finish the border wall. And I know that it's I was happy to read from the president of Mexico. I can't remember her name either. And she had said, there are no more caravan coming to the border. It's like, I'll believe that when I see it. But I did read today a little deal that a bunch of them said, "Oh, this is so disappointing." They turned around and going back.
A lack of money talks.
Yeah. Exactly. And also when Trump says, "You know what? If we have to deport you and you come back, you're going to get 10 years. Yeah. It's going to affect your ability to live here permanently and get resident status or even become a citizen." There are a lot of tools in the toolbox, and I'm so thankful that Trump's not afraid to use them. And there was a Supreme Court or a Ninth Circuit court case. There was a court case in the last couple days that said that Trump has the right to enforce the borders and do the deportations. And I think it was the Ninth Circuit. And I'm going, hallelujah, because there's a lot of there's going to be attempt to be a court action on that. And I think I think the wind will be at Trump's back to get it enforced because he's already been there once.
Oh, it's so obvious. What defines a nation? If you can't define a nation but by its borders, the nation has the right to determine who gets in and who goes out. And a nation can't survive with an open border. It's never happened. That's the path to destruction. And so it's just awesome that he's able to get this done. And then just slightly switching gears, because you said something a moment ago, that made me think about the lack of principles of the Democrat Party. So the one thing for sure is when the principles work to their favor, they'll be in favor of principles. And when they're not, they won't. They're completely unprincipled. If there's anything that defines that party more than anything else over the last years, it's this. And maybe the most outrageous example of that. And think about the number of outrages we're talking about. So for me to say this is the most outrageous one is a pretty tall order. And that's Biden pardoning his son after saying and promising forever that he wouldn't pardon him. It's outrageous. And he pardoned him for like anything that could have happened between, I think, is now and 2012, which is about the time they went to the Ukraine. Could that be a coincidence, by the way? Right. I don't know how that's indefensible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people say, come on, these talking heads, and oh, well, it's something that anyone would have done for their son. I disagree with that. I mean, if my son did some heinous crime, I mean, I want him to get the best defense possible. But, if you did that, then, you're kind of on your own. I'll visit you in prison.
Well,
But
that's
I think
because
the
you're
real reason,
principled, Don.
well, yeah, exactly. Well, I think the real reason he did it, and this sounds terrible to say, but I think the real reason that he pardoned him was because all of the things his son did will tie directly back to him personally.
Mhm.
Um, and this
Absolutely.
is just my guess. And again, the principles of these guys, this is a family show, so I can hardly say it. But remember, this guy was doing cocaine in the White House. I mean, there's so many things that they've done, you hardly forget it. This guy, I'm talking about the president's son. I hardly can say the word president. He's engaged in a relationship with his dead brother's wife, right? It's like you can't make this stuff up. How unprincipled they are, and the regular citizen who watches the regular media is never hearing this stuff. But one of the greatest things that's happened as a result of this destruction they've caused, they've destroyed the credibility of their own media. And now more and more of the country is not listening to them. So that's another great news item is how the market share of places like MSNBC and CNN are plummeting to the point where they're having
Yes.
to fire people and lay people off because nobody's watching them, which means people are getting their news from places that are far more likely to be truthful. I know I've just wandered around a little bit, but I just thought I had to bring that up about him pardoning his son. Can you imagine a Republican doing something like that? I,
Well,
well, remember Ford pardoned Nixon, and he didn't get reelected because of it, and it wasn't for anything as egregious as this.
no, it isn't. And I never believed truthfully for me, I never believed him when he said, I'm not going to ever pardon my son because you see, Hunter was taking care of the big guy with the family business. And I think I think all of the family players are going to all be pardoned because his brother, even the brother, the sister-in-law, the daughter-in-law, and even the children, which is Joe's grandchildren, are been getting money unbeknownst to them. I mean, they're not. I'm not. I won't. I don't. I can't say necessarily unbeknownst to them, but maybe no fault of their own with all of the shell companies and all of the bank accounts that they had to hide what's going on. And so we need, so it didn't surprise me. I never believed it, but maybe he said it that if Harris had won, he would have stayed true to that. But I can't imagine that, because you look at the lawfare that has gone on with Trump, a statute of limitations doesn't hardly mean anything. Of course, those cases have not been appealed to a higher court yet, either, you know.
Well, here may be the blessing in disguise. That's that old saying about God working in mysterious ways. The fact that He pardoned His Son, well, it's egregious to people like us. It has sure made it a lot easier to make the case that anybody having to do with that whole J6 thing they drummed up, they should be released on day one. They should be pardoned on day one. So you think about all of those cases where people are protesting abortion clinics, and you got old ladies who are locked up because they walked in front of an abortion clinic. All right, we've actually done that. We got people rotting in jail from J6 for the last 4 years where they were just peaceful protesting. All of those people should be released on day one, unless you have something on some evidence of some physical violence or something going on. Day one, I would love that, and I really hope that happens. I think there's a good chance that it might. And this thing that Biden just did for his son, I think it really made it easier to argue that case.
Oh yeah, 100% it did. It was actually a gift to Trump in order to be
Yep.
able to do some of those pardons on day one or day two, because some of these people were walking on the lawn. You know,
Yeah,
they
it's
never even
unbelievable.
went in. There's even
Mhm,
one fellow who wasn't even there, and he's in jail just
mhm,
because of who he is. And so there's so many egregious acts by this administration. And I can't even say, so sad to
mhm.
not even say it's not even, I don't believe just Joe Biden doing this, but the puppet masters
Oh,
behind, you
It,
know.
it's definitely the puppet masters. I
Yeah.
mean, you think to yourself, for example, and it was Soros funding all these protesters at the last election. Well, why aren't they out there now? Why aren't they burning and looting and destroying things and protesting in every corner? They're not paying them. The spigot's turned off. Um,
Well,
y-
when you end up your campaign ends 20 million in the hole, that's a big number.
oh, there's so many angles here. I mean, so this woman is supposed to run the biggest country in the world, and they spent how many billions was it to get elected? It was some
One
crazy number.
1.4.
So 1.4 billion, and not only do you lose in an epic landslide, you wind up in debt, and you're not even paying off your staffers.
No.
Didn't even pay it's like, and you wanted to run the country? You can't make it up.
Well, this is one of the reasons that Biden's trying to spend as much money as he can. It's to re maybe refill the coffers. I feel like the money just kind of goes in a circle, Gonna give it over to this NGO and that NGO, and then that NGO ends up donating, which is why, thankfully, there is an investigation into Act Blue.
Oh, that's right.
I'm I'm so glad of it. I mean, with the undercover video that has gone out there with it, people that James O'Keefe has been so excellent
Mhm.
at knocking on people's doors and say, do you donate to the Democrat Party? Oh, sure, I donate. Well, have you given $10,000 this past year? What? No, I give 5 or 10, once a month. Well, I don't have that kind of money. And the woman's sitting outside of a trailer. It's, it's a dang scam.
Well, when you start listening, and I've not done this, by the way, but this is just off the top of my head, the number of investigations that should be done that they've just stifled. So you have Epstein. The only person who got in trouble for that was one woman. This is the party that's supposed to be protecting women. And none of the Johns, if you will, I'll call them by their names, not a single one, really? Then you got the P. Diddy thing, right? So you got that. Um, Obviously, you got the Biden son thing, which now we know is not going to ever get investigated. Then you have the COVID scam. How many lawsuits can come out of that? Where you force people to get shots, people have died as a result of it. People have gotten sick as a result of it. People have lost their jobs because they wouldn't get it. People kicked out of the military because they wouldn't get it. So you could, I don't even know where this, and that cascade is going to be. Those cans of worms are going to finally get opened. And with RFK in that position, oh my goodness,
Oh,
how
yeah.
many? The government, pharmaceutical companies, large insurance companies, employers who did this stuff, they all need to take a major hit. Nothing like this. This must not ever happen again.
100%. And in fact, I haven't read the COVID report has come out, and a 2-year study has come out, and part of it is one of the determinations that I loved. I haven't read it. It's long. It's like 500 pages or something, but I've seen some snippets. One of them is you cannot pause our Constitution in times of crisis.
Yep.
And this is what they tried to do.
Yep.
And many people fell for it and many did not. This is how Captive Audience came to be, because 4 people said, oh no, we're not doing this. And we have to speak truth, about it. And so, yeah, I want to delve into that report a lot more. There's a lot there, but I'll tell you with what Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk will do with the Department of Government Efficiency, and RFK Jr. will do to help make America healthy again. It's going to be phenomenal. And did you hear that Trump has said all military that were relieved of duty for not getting the jab will be reinstated fully?
That is so awesome.
It is awesome. And it needs to be, and it needs to be with back pay, because that was wrong. And that should never happen again. We have our right to yay or nay, and education, and what are they? Informed consent. Informed consent.
But that whole action served another purpose too. I'm convinced of it. That was strategic, because the people that would refuse to get it were more likely than not to be a certain kind of person.
Yes.
A
Yes.
kind of person, a patriotic kind of person, the person who's going to defend the Constitution. They wanted those people out.
It was a purging.
It was a purging. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So 2 things need to happen. They need to be reinstated with back pay, and the people who did that to them, they need to be out.
100%. They
Because
do, court-martialed even, because, I mean, I know in the military, you're a military guy, I'm not a military person, but you have a rank, you have your hierarchy there, and you're going to follow orders. And there are great men and women that refuse to follow orders, and I can think of one was a surgeon, a physician, and he said, he was a military physician. I can't remember his name. And he said, this is wrong. What's happening? Boom. I think he was court-martialed and, or relieved for certainly of duty. And that's the type of thing that all has to get undone. And do you court-martial the ones that gave the orders?
I think you seriously. Here's the thing: we have a tradition in this country around rule of law, and in our military, there's such things as an illegal order or an unconstitutional order.
Yes.
When we sign up for the military, you sign up for what to defend the Constitution of the United States, not to defend a person, not to defend a policy, but uphold the Constitution. If that order is an illegal order or one that does not do that, then you have the right to not follow that order. Now, obviously, you're going to suffer some consequences for that, but that's how we create heroes.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because, the Constitution, that's the top law of our nation. That is the top law of our nation. And if something goes against it, you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, and if ever there was an illegal order, it's that one. Just like you remember a number of years ago, there was a big dogfight over trying to force the military to fight under the United Nations flag.
Oh, yeah.
that's against the Constitution. And we had officers who refused to do it, and those guys got kicked out. I think they may have been. I think there's been some. I think some of them have been reinstated since then. It's been a long time since that happened. But
Mhm.
those guys that stood up and said that were 100% right. We are a sovereign nation, and we're not going to send our troops under somebody else's flag.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, I'm not tired of winning, Don.
Oh, I
I
wake up every morning with a smile.
well, I look to see, I get pissed off at the same time seeing what Biden's doing in
Mhm,
his last days, last few weeks, and trying to spend.
mhm.
And it's just that part pisses me off. But I'll tell you, I look to see what's going on, what Trump's doing, and knowing that I feel our country is in such better hands. Now, of course, there's Americans that think we're wrong, Don. But you know what? Our side is fighting for the Constitution and following the Constitution instead of trying to remake America
Mhm.
into a socialist or communist nation.
Well, and I think here's the positive too. And there's many positives here, but I think one of the great positives we're going to see is one of the ways that they were able to leverage things so much to get to this was control over the media. And that has really begun to crumble due to all the lying they did. So we talked a little bit earlier about the destruction of CNN, MSNBC, and the rise of podcast like this. People are going to places like this to get their news. There's the
Yeah.
Joe Rogans of the world, right? There's lots of other places. There's Matt Walsh. There's Knowles, right? There's all kinds of sources that people are going
There's
to.
captive audience.
There's captive audience. Exactly. And so people are going to Epic Times, right? And
Yes.
what we want is lots of small sources, not only a couple of large ones, because it's easy to buy off and control any one large entity. You're much better off. I think it was Milton Friedman coined the term "small is beautiful." This is why, and you hear me always say this. This is why this country is really 50 nations, 50 states, which we call the United States, because the founders understood the brilliance of having 50 different. They didn't know it was going to be 50, but at that time 13, but 50 different labs where you could try 50 different versions of democracy under this constitutional umbrella.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant. So if California wants to drive itself off the cliff with social stuff, and Kansas wants to put in place conservative stuff that works, they can do that. The voters can compare the two, and you can leave California and go to a state that's run well, and that state will suffer enough, and it'll turn around and change its ways. It may take a while, it may take a generation or two, but it happens. And I think we're turning the truck. I mean, you've seen those maps where California geographically is more red than all the states are more red than they are blue, and every single state became more red.
Yeah.
Every county, we take a look at the counties; they all became more red over this last election cycle
Yeah.
because we saw what happens when you put those policies into place, and you can't hide from reality. You can lie as long as you want, and this is the argument we talked about earlier, but everybody sees inflation. It's just too obvious. I mean, you can't lie about it. You go to the store, there it is in your face. You drive by the pump, there it is in your face. You can't lie. You can't hide. Um, and the great thing about having this news be dispersed, now people can begin to understand why. So lots of great things are happening. We got a 40-year fight to fight. It's not going to be over, but
Yes.
the tide has turned. It's like the Battle of Midway in World War II. The Japanese were winning until Midway. We've reached Midway, and I'm loving it.
Yes. Yes. I'll tell you, keep praying for our nation and praying for
Absolutely.
Trump and everybody that he's appointed because they are being attacked horrifically. And take what you hear from the parrot media with a little grain of salt because they are being attacked right now. Pete Hegseth is being horribly attacked,
Mhm.
and as you stated in the very beginning, when you're over the target, you're going to get a lot more flack. So it's a good thing. It's a great. It's I just so look forward to seeing all of this come forward, moving forward, And it's amazing to see what Trump is getting accomplished, and he's not even in office yet.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten there yet. Can't wait
No,
for day one. So,
me
well,
either.
we've used up our 56 minutes. thank, thank you all, audience, for staying with us. This always is like the fastest 56 minutes of my week. Every time we get off of this, Sunny and I look at each other and say, "Can you believe it's been 55?" Or, but it's fun talking to you all. We really enjoy it.
Yes, we do. So everybody, like and share this around, and I'll be back on Friday. Thank you so much, and we'll have a good night.
God bless you all. Let freedom ring. Bye, everybody.